All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And, I love having these types of guests because they give an insight into how you're running a part of your business. But they are a business. See, this gentleman, Jacob Hicks, success coach, driving innovation and creating balance. He's the CEO, author, speaker, entrepreneur, leadership coach, mindset expert. Jacob Hicks is a coach and keynote speaker over a decade of experience transforming lives and businesses. Thanks to 10 years in sales, Jacob had a chance to identify what drives lasting success in delivering impeccable strategies to help clients achieve it. We have podcasters like myself that enjoy working with him and practical insights and engaging storytelling. So he's known for strong follow-up systems, which is a big deal in your business, and mindset-driven coaching. Jacob empowers clients across industries to overcome challenges, implement sustainable systems, and move forward with confidence. Jacob, hey, welcome to the Go for CO channel.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Really excited for it. I've really been enjoying what you guys have been doing over there. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it was birthed out of 3.5 or 4 years ago, right around the pandemic time, and seeing small to medium-sized business owners, either shut down or have to
Mm.
repivot. But I've always felt like I don't need to have the big names on to you do this podcast. I want to have the names that are impacting, doing some things that maybe people don't know as well, but it gives them a voice on the channel. So thanks for stopping by. As I read, you had 10 years of sales experience, which is, they say 10,000 hours gets you to mastery level. What was some of the things that made you decide, hey, I'm going to start a success coaching business? And how did that kind of ideate from where you were to starting the actual business?
Well, I mean, honestly, it kind of came in like bits and starts as you kind of expect. During my sales career, I realized that what I really enjoyed doing was helping people navigate either like a murky or a difficult situation that they may not have a lot of familiarity with. Like even early on in my sales career, when I was first selling suits, what I really enjoyed was helping people figure out like, okay, what do I need to wear for my wedding? I've got, a couple of job interviews coming up. I'm, starting a new career and I need to wear, some more formal clothing day to day now. So like how do I navigate some of these things, particularly for guys who like some guys are weird like me who like to, dress up a little bit and like, to put the look together. But a lot of guys just want to be able to like, hey, throw something on, not have to think about it too much and just walk out the door. So helping kind of navigate some of those things was really kind of where it all really started for me. And more recently, what I've realized is like I mean, a lot of salespeople will probably tell you this that in sales, like you get kind of a rush, you get some excitement when you close a big deal, you have like a big potential prospect come on. And I realized that I get the same kind of rush when my clients do that. Like when somebody says like, hey, like text me or emails me and says, hey, I just had like we just were talking about the strategy and something really amazing has happened in my business now or helping in my in my personal life. So that's really kind of where everything kind of started for me.
Nate. So I kind of heard a little bit there where style and the way you felt impacted kind of the way that you were approaching people
Mm,
and the energy that you had, right?
yeah.
So and helping others do that is a big deal, right? The way you feel, your physical appearance, the clothes that you wear, the cleanliness, the sharp side of things, can all impact, especially when you're making an impression for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, really cool. So tell me, I mean, I guess, were you doing this part-time initially, just to kind of get a sense of what made you start the business itself?
So really for me, like I've always been somebody that's always pursued excellence or pursued like a better way to do things. And self-development, like learning new things has always been a big part of that for me. So about a I don't know, well, year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, I guess, I was actually sitting down with a coach myself and saying like, hey, like does this make sense for me to like could this get me to where I want to go? Like does it help me develop my goals and kind of things like that? And during our initial discussion, like kind of a light bulb moment went on where I realized that like that is what I wanted to be doing. Like I mean I like selling and those kind of things, but I mean on a bigger level, what I really want to do is help impact somebody else's life and help it impact their business. And during our discussion, like I mean, kind of pivoted from like my own goals and sales and like those kind of things in my initial career to maybe developing my own coaching business. And like he realized like I mean he agreed with me. He's like, "Listen, man, like you could probably be doing this too." So I mean that's kind of where it all started. I did start, part-time. I'm a big believer that I like what I call like steps of faith as opposed to leaps of faith. So started doing it part-time, worked with some clients here and there, of course, like I said, very, very part-time because I was there's a lot of full-time job I needed to focus on. Um, but over the course of time, I mean, things started to grow, some momentum started to get built, and I eventually made the leap into the full-time work, and here I am today.
It's interesting. That kind of caught my brain there. The visual. I'm gonna have to try to edit that somehow. But the step of faith instead of the leap of faith, right? And that's so huge, right? I think most people in business, that want to start their own business, the entrepreneurial journey, they forget that if they just take one step, then they'll learn. Okay, here's what's going on. If they take the leap, they sometimes can fall to disaster. So uh,
Yes, yeah.
that's a huge part. So tell us, I mean, obviously, you start understanding some of the skill sets, some of the things that you've been able to develop. You obviously maybe had some interactions where you helped someone else. What was that transition period like for you, from going from getting coached, which you sought out good expertise, to being the coach?
So, I mean, in that kind of transition, I mean, as you would expect, I mean, as any entrepreneur will tell you, whether you are, kind of a solopreneur or you have like, a handful of people behind you, you are going to wear a lot of hats a lot of the time. And that was kind of the biggest learning curve for me when I went from like you said, like being coach to being the coach. And I realized that I mean, I'm the guy that, has to make sure that all of my systems are functioning and helping helping me kind of just float the business along. When I was first kind of transitioning into the full-time gig, um, I mean, it was kind of a lot, right? Like, and the mindset piece, like you mentioned, is gonna be kind of a big piece of this. Like, you're gonna have moments where I think you're just kind of burning it down, right? Like where you're like, why am I even doing this? Like, why does any of this really kind of make sense? But you kind of just have to push through some of those things. And a big kind of strategy for me that I actually got from a gentleman that works with Dave Ramsey, John Deloney, is I mean, I'm not a huge journaler. Like I'm not gonna like just sit down and write, pages and pages. That's never really been who I am. But when you have those moments of just kind of self-doubt or like you're just not like some uncertainty, because there's always going to be a lot of fog in business and entrepreneurship, is to sit down and write some of those like negative thoughts that might be kind of surfacing. And then ask yourself in either a few moments or maybe an hour or two later and like reread those and say, like, are these really true? And a lot of the time, like, it's not. It's just kind of like you getting in your own head. So taking the time to step back and really determine, like, is this really what you want to be doing is really important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, you were told by a mentor, hey, you've got these skill sets. You
Mhm.
knew that you had them in you, but you had to almost have someone kind of bring them out of you. It
Yeah.
seems like, and then share that with the world of what you started doing. So, what were some of the first ways that you started marketing your business? Did you take time to really get a good website, or did you develop a business card? Like, what were some of those things that helped you start to convert, from what you were doing in sales in general day to day to, doing the coaching and doing the sales coaching side?
So, I mean, it was I mean, a couple of things you kind of mentioned. I mean, it was a little bit of a business card. I mean, I've got one for like more like in-person networking events. But really it was kind of the website. That's really kind of where I started. I mean, I think the website, not that you have to have like something like super crazy highly polished. Like for me, like I'm not like a super designy kind of guy. Like that's just not who I am. So I reached out to some folks that were referred to me to see if it made sense to work together and it ended up making sense. So I had a gal named Marcia really help me figure out some of like the design pieces and like the color schemes and like the copy piece. Because I think that the website can add a lot of credibility, particularly early on. And I was doing some social media marketing around that too. It's something that I call like a behind the scenes look, where you can say like, hey, I've got like these like handful of pictures. Like here's like two or three pictures I'm thinking about posting on like as my cover photo. Like when you first enter my website, I would post that say like, hey, which one do you think makes looks the best? And like just to drive some engagement and to make people more aware, like, oh, he's gonna be, kind of diving into this a little bit heavier. The business card, I mean, was kind of just like an auxiliary piece. said I wanted something that I could really hand out to folks at networking events. But really, what it was is just reaching out and letting people know what I'm doing. Like I had like I think it was like 45 or 50 different people like emails that I'd collected, over the years of people I knew and like had good relationships with, and just say like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. Here's kind of the person that I'm looking to help and to facilitate with. Do you know of anybody like that? And just like build some momentum around those things too. But then again, as you mentioned, having like that strong follow up systems is really important too to have that on the back end.
Well, let's dive into that, right? I mean, obviously, you're starting the business. You got to make some money. Yeah,
Yes.
you're trying to figure out, oh, wait, who's your ideal avatar client, right?
Mhm.
And looking around, but you've got a warm network that knows you already, and you had some
Yeah.
emails and stuff like that. So, what were some of the ways that you personally, in your own business, started following up when that those calls weren't coming in right away? And I don't, or maybe they did, right? Maybe there was a rush of calls and you were busy all of a sudden, but what were some of the ways that you did the follow-up side of things?
So, I mean, there's a kind of a few different strategies, particularly early on, that you want to be kind of focused on, at least that I was focused on when I was reaching out to those, several dozen people that I felt were warm. I was being very, very personal with them, saying like, hey, John, like, remember that time that we were, working on this particular project, like just like some of those things to warm them back up if I hadn't talked to them a little bit. And I wasn't bugging them like super hard. I was just saying like if they hadn't followed up or hadn't reached back out to me, saying just, hey man, just want to make sure that this email didn't get lost in all the shuffle. Because I mean, people can get busy and forget about something that may not be super high on their priority list. But as I started to gain momentum and started to meet more people, I mean, I think the easiest thing I saw stats on this just the other day where one out of every two business people or salespeople don't follow up more than once, which I think is just a little for me, it's a little astounding, but it's also almost kind of encouraging because the bar is kind of low, meaning that if you are following up consistently, then I mean you're going to differentiate yourself right away just from doing that. But I think the easiest thing that at least that I think people get on the entrepreneurial side can kind of struggle with sometimes is thinking that they're bothering people. So like when I'm following up with somebody, I want to make sure that I'm following up from a place of value just as much as I possibly can. Meaning that I'm not sending another, the 15th email saying like, hey, do you want to buy my stuff now? But saying something like, hey, like I know in our initial conversation, you said you were, struggling with X, Y, and Z. Here's how I've dealt with that in the past, or here's, kind of my top, three or four things to that I always think about when I'm struggling with that kind of thing. So just following up from a place of value, but then doing it consistently, meaning that you're not necessarily messaging them or calling them every single day, but you just have like a strong cadence. Like my kind of initial strategy that I always start people off with is what I call a 10 by 10, meaning that you meet somebody out at a networking event, you hit it off, you exchange contact information. And then over the course of the next, 2.5 months, 10 weeks, you're reaching out to them at least once a week from a place of value. And that doesn't always have to be like calls, but it could be calls, texts, emails, even like LinkedIn Messenger, like that kind of stuff.
Nate, Nate, nowadays there's so many ways to contact someone, right? I mean, obviously it's old school phone,
Yep.
then email, then hey, why don't you even try something old like writing a little letter, a postcard, right?
Yes.
With handwritten envelopes. I've always taught that and gotten a lot of response from that, especially the last 10 years because everybody's so electronic. Sometimes they get so surprised that you have a mailed stamped envelope with their name on it.
Yes.
It's pretty interesting. So really cool stuff. So tell us, you start marketing, you start following up to these initial warm network that you had. What was
Mhm.
that first pop, that first opportunity that came about, and how did you start to put the process together to be able to put them into either were you doing like an hourly thing or did you put them into a package? Did you already have some set, packages per se?
Yeah, so my initial kind of pop was like kind of through like those warm leads, like I mentioned, like not necessarily like the like my actual friends that I'm seeing, like once a week or however often we're hanging out, but kind of like friends of friends, like people I kind of know of, but I may not know super well. That was my initial pop. And like I knew some folks and I was going to some networking events, here locally in Iowa. And I ran into some of them and we were like, having some conversations and we hit it off. And we ended up following, like I said, following up as like some of those strategies I mentioned before. And kind of one of my favorite, this is, I mean, I think maybe a little kooky, but something that's kind of fun, as opposed to necessarily meeting for like for coffee or for lunch or, like those kind of things. I like to see if somebody's open to it and, up for it, to going for a walk. I've seen a lot of studies that show that if you're trying to connect with somebody, doing it like over a walk where you're not necessarily like sitting across the table from somebody, and like directly eye to eye can really facilitate a lot of conversation and a lot of honesty too. So we ended up going for a walk. And I mean, it wasn't like a super long walk where we're going for, hours and hours and miles. But it was a short, 20-minute walk. And it went really, really well. And ended up converting and working together for, I mean, about 6 months. And that was like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of learning curves to be going into, something like that where we did end up working for doing meeting every week for about an hour, which is usually kind of about my process and still is. But really kind of diving into um, their needs and like really like where they might be struggling. As I said, a lot of entrepreneurs like they don't want to be salespeople, right? Like they started a business because they want to help a certain demographic in a specific way with their, specific skill set. So they don't want to be salespeople. So they do selling without selling is what I call it, where you're again following up from a place of value and not just bothering people as opposed to, like I said, following up for value, which is really what you need to be doing.
No, it's interesting. I mean, I think the theme around the business world, at least from the interviews that I've had, right, is how do you share value continually,
Yeah.
almost free,
Yeah.
in a sense. I know Alex Hormozy is a big guy of like, he's just putting a ton of stuff out there, very, very
Yeah.
great content. And then
I'm a
on
big
the
fan of
back
his.
end, he has this company called acquisition.com that he gets you to almost basically trust him so much because you've heard him so many times through different mediums and his books and everything.
Mhm.
You naturally do business with him, right? So it does take some time that way. It's a longer sales cycle, but certainly something that then becomes a genuinely good client per se, right? So how
Yeah.
did you start to set up? Did you, I guess, look at other coaches for um, uh, their, their packages, their pricing models? Did you only do per hour at the beginning? Have you transitioned over the last few years into a different model, or how does that pricing side work?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, like, I'm a big fan of Hermosi too. Like, he has a saying that I'm a big fan of, where he says, "Make your free stuff better than their paid stuff," which I've always kind of striven to do. But in terms of the pricing on my side, I mean, I've messed with a few different things where I've done like the packages where you get like X amount of hours with me. Obviously, like some, accountability and follow up via like email or text or whatever, kind of in between. And I've also, but I really what I've landed on here recently is for individuals, we'll do like some one-on-one coaching where we do like say per hour. And then for large organizations that I worked with, where either they're like trying to like maybe for the first time establish like a true sales team, or they're trying to like develop their sales team into what I would call like more of a true sales team. Like some of the folks I've worked with have like a sales team, I guess, quote unquote, but not where they are doing like true cold outreach, where they're like working a territory, like that kind of thing, more facilitators, I would say, on the back end. For those folks, I've landed on what I call like a retainer package, where they get either like 2 to 4 sessions per month, and they can kind of divvy those up. Usually, I'll at least start working with like higher end leadership, either one on one or in a group setting, and then we do a la carte. So if maybe they have like a huge influx of new salespeople, they want me to kind of help facilitate and train in some form or fashion, then they can purchase one-on-one coaching just as needed. And then I always offer what I call like a 30-minute emergency call, where I mean business can move quickly and some things that come up that we didn't expect or didn't hadn't planned for. It comes up quicker than we expected. So they have a once a month, I'll get a 30-minute call where like, hey, some stuff's really popping off for me. Like, how do we kind of navigate this? What do we struggle with? What are the questions we need to be asking? Um, but like, those are just some of those things that I think can add value that people don't always make the most use of. Like another example of those things are, I mean, again, depending on the retainer, they can get like a quarterly keynote or a quarterly workshop where like I come in and work with their sales teams to actually, drive towards whatever goals or struggles they might be having at the particular time.
Nate. And did you start to, I guess, put a system afterwards, after maybe the second or third client, or had you already developed a pattern of how you start to discover what they need Because obviously, if someone's building a sales team from scratch, even though they were the salesman of their business,
Yeah.
it's a little bit different than going into a current, team, maybe of 3, 5, 10, 20, but they're struggling. There's three to, there's a percentage that just aren't fulfilling, aren't hitting numbers, doing that
Yeah.
stuff. So was there different strategies, or you've kind of, learned as you've gone and seen what works?
I mean, a little of both, I would say. I mean, the way that I always start people, whether they're like wanting me to come in for like their full sales team or develop a sales team or just like one-on-one coaching, the way I always start people is with what I call a complimentary call, where they get a free call to really, I mean, determine needs and stuff, of course, but really just determine if it makes sense for the potential client or for me to like work with them. And I've told people like, listen, I mean, I really love what you're doing. I think you're like really on the right track. You got a lot of good things cooking, but I don't know that I'm the right person for you because of X, Y, and Z. I focus more on, these sales strategies or like you're like, you think you're dealing with some sales problems, but really you're dealing with more like higher end, like, executive suite issues. And I mean, I tell people that up front. I mean, that's kind of really the big differentiator I think between me and some other folks is like I'm very much willing to tell people no if I don't think it makes sense or if I think, hey, instead of like working with me or one on one right now, I want you to go and read X, Y, and Z book because it has like these kind of strategies or these other things in there that I think could help you right now, and then maybe we can revisit those things in 3, 6, or whatever months when it makes a little bit more sense. And I said that complimentary call is where I do a lot of my discovery and figuring out like, okay, I think based on this call, these are the things that you need, and here's how I can help you with that.
And once you find that, nugget, right, that
Mhm.
pain point per se, do you then put I guess, a diaphragm strategy behind it, or are you exploring steps so that it knows to, what to do next?
So, I mean, kind of both. So, I mean, a big stat that I've seen in sales is that is 80% of business is one in at least 5 or more follow-ups, meaning that you might meet with somebody and it might 100% make sense for you to work with them, but, it's a not right now kind of a thing. So, when it comes to my complimentary calls, I do my best to have folks walk away with at least a couple of strategies, some action items that they could hopefully implement, or at least, kind of kick things into gear and help them to think about some other things in a different way. Even if it doesn't make sense for us to work together right then and there. Um, but even if it isn't a direct strategy, like, hey, you need to focus more on, your follow-ups, or you need to focus more on your cold calling, your prospecting, or, that kind of stuff. I will still try to help them to kind of think through and walk away with at least like, hey, because you're building out your sales team and you ultimately want to look like this in 2, 3, 5 years, here's the handful of steps that I would kind of go through to make sure that you are ultimately driving towards those things. Because if I'm working one-on-one with a salesperson, that's very, very different from working with an executive who's thinking about either revamping or building out a whole new sales team in a different way.
Your business makes me think of, like a chiropractor, right? You go to
Yeah.
the chiropractor to get adjusted, and you're always thinking, well, how does the chiropractor get adjusted, right? To who do they go
Yeah.
with, or something like that, right? So in your business, you mentioned at the beginning that you had a mentor. Do you still use those mentors? Do you find that as you've built out your business and have now retainer clients, you have hourly clients, you have one to many clients.
Mhm.
What are some things that you're finding that are adjustments that you've had to do to, keep the revenues going, right? Keep the growth going.
So I 100% still use my mentors, but I mean, it's in different ways. The analogy that I kinda always use in my head is, like, I'm not a golfer, but think of it as like buying, like, some golf clubs, right? So, like, if you're a brand new person, you can go and spend, 50, $100 off of Facebook Marketplace or whatever and buy a set of golf clubs, right? Because your skill set isn't quite there yet. But if you were talking about, somebody like, Tiger Woods or Bryson DeChambeau or whatever else, like, on the tour, like, if they go out and buy a pair like a golf club, is a very specific golf club, even though that might have a very small tweak in some form or fashion that somebody like me who doesn't really play golf, we wouldn't really notice in our swing, they will 100% notice. So I
Mhm.
guess to answer your question, the thing is, like, we don't know what we don't know. So being very, very curious, like, the older I've gotten in business and just in life in general, I think one of the best strategies we can implement in almost any scenario is to come from curiosity. Whether that be like in your own business or in somebody else's business or working with a client or a potential client or like having like an argument with your significant other or having a disagreement with a business partner, coming from curiosity, I think is really, really key and to always be kind of questioning our assumptions. So like one for me, when I was like, I've talked about it a little bit already is the coming from a place of value, right? And you mentioned like, how do you kind of keep that fresh and how do you like even find that stuff that is going to be of value to like your avatar? The way that I always kind of coach people through this is to ask yourself like, what are the questions I'm already answering? Like if you're meeting with somebody one on one, like if you're, a Facebook marketer, for example, it's like a lot of the questions you're probably going to be getting are like, how often should I be posting on Facebook? Or how often should I be posting on Instagram? Or like what kind of videos should I be doing videos? Like some of those kind of questions you're probably going to be getting from most everybody a lot of the time. So when it comes to your like your follow up or just the stuff you're posting on LinkedIn or whatever, answering some of those questions. Say like, hey, I get this question all the time. Here's kind of my top two or three strategies or my top two or three like talking points that I always go through. And the other thing to bear in mind is that you live in your world, right? Meaning that like I'm a sales guy. So like I think about sales all the time. So it's so easy for me to think, well, I think about sales all the time. So, John and everybody else I talk to are probably thinking about sales all the time. And they're not, right? Like people are not thinking about that kind of stuff. So that all that to say, we can reiterate our points over and over again in different ways that will resonate with different people. And the nice thing about doing like podcasts or going on social media is that stuff can live forever. Meaning
Hmm.
that somebody might find you in a year and they say like, "Hey, I saw this post about X, Y, and Z thing. It really, really resonated with me. It really spoke to my issue right now, and I wanted to reach out to you." And you're like, "Wow, that was from like 2 years ago. I didn't even realize anybody was even looking at any of that stuff anymore." So like just like reiterate stuff in different ways, answering those like top 4, 5, 10 questions that you get all the time can go a really long way.
Yeah, there's a reason why most companies on their website have FAQs, right?
Yeah,
They know that, it's those lingering things that we all, need a question about, a recipe of the timing of, building something. How do you get this bike done? I'm not handy,
yeah.
so I'm always looking at FAQs on that
Right.
side of things. So, it's interesting stuff. So, well, Nate, as you grew the business, right, and got your first, third, 20th client per se, what were some things that you needed to do, even just in the business? Did you start to have a VA? Did you, create, other relationships that maybe you brought other vendors per se, to work with you on deals? Maybe something opened up from a client, not just in sales, but they wanted some guidance on operations, and then you started to joint venture with someone else. What were some of those things that you've done or you're working on right now?
So, I mean, a few things that I learned, especially like you said, as I was building momentum and like my time just got sucked up in working, in the business as opposed to on the business, is outsource. Like, I mean, the VA was, I mean, really, really like that. I I can't tell you enough how much that helped because I just helped like, manage like some emails and just like some marketing, like some of like the small tasks. I was at a conference last fall and I was, talking to like some of the folks that were there, and this gal was talking about how entrepreneurs can so often choose the $10 task as opposed to a $100 task because we think we have to get it all done by ourselves. And, like, for me, like, I don't consider myself, like, a social media guy. Like, I mean, I'm everywhere, right? But I just don't it's just not my thing. So, outsourcing some of those things that I don't feel like I'm as good at and other people are really passionate about, I think is really, really important. So, I mean, I don't have, like, a huge team behind me. I mean, like I said, the VA, some social media stuff, here and there. And then, like I said, making sure that I have, like, the folks in my corner to have the hard conversations with me saying, like, "Listen, Jacob, like, this is not working anymore. You need to do things in a different way," has been really, really, really key because it can be so easy, particularly as you gain more success and momentum and people around you see that, to have, like, the yes men kinda show up where they think, like, "Oh, yeah, he just wants the positivity." And, like, positivity, it can be great, but you also need to have somebody that can kick you in the butt when you need it.
Yeah. No, it's huge, right? Always be learning, right? And
Mm.
keep yourself
Mhm.
open to different ideas and how you're going to grow the business itself. So operationally, when you have, multiple clients and you're strategizing in this genre, right, where you're helping their sales team, are you leaving handouts behind? Have you created a website where there's some videos that they could tune into while you're not, training them personally? What are some ways that you've developed some leave behinds per se?
So, like when I'm doing, particularly when I'm doing, like keynotes and or workshops, I'm a really, really big fan of like physical printouts of some form or fashion. And I really like I mean, kind of go back to like almost third grade where like it's a fill in the blank kind of a thing,
Mm,
where I'm talking through like, hey, here's, like some follow-up strategies or whatever, whatever the topic is for that day. And they're actually going through like the 10 or 15 or whatever pages it ends up being, handout, and actually filling in, okay, well, this is what Jacob said, and then this is what, and the other big thing that I think is really key when it comes to leave behinds, and we're talking about strategies and those kind of things, is to encourage people to start thinking on their own. Meaning, like for example, like I talked about like my 10 by 10 strategy to follow up with somebody, to warm them back up. Now that's all that's I mean, that's really good strategy, right? It works for a lot of people, but I always like to ask people to think like, okay, how can I apply this to me? How can I apply this in my own business? Because more often than not, we don't want to apply things that we don't really believe in, and we don't believe in something that we don't have buy into. So
mm,
saying like for example, like with like that initial client that I mentioned earlier, we were talking through like the 10 by 10. And during our conversation, he realized that, hey, like this is a good strategy, but I think it's going to work better for me if I do like essentially the same thing, but a 7 by 7. Over 7 weeks, he's going to reach out 7 times and doing that consistently. So like just finding like some of those things where people can say like, okay, this is the strategy. I really like the strategy, but how can I apply it? How can I make it my own and take it from Jacob and make it John's or James or whatever, make it mine as opposed to his, and I think go a long way in terms of actually having impact as opposed to just showing up, handing something, and hoping that they resonate with it.
Nate, Nate. So, one thing we always talk about is revenue, right?
Yeah.
So what came to mind is you've shared, and I think you're an author, right, as well.
Mm.
So you're an author, a keynote speaker. Obviously, you do the one-on-ones, you do the one-to-many. What are some of those revenues, and how do they look like? What's the time frame that you have that you put, throughout the year? Is there like 20% you seek to do keynote speaking and get paid for that? Maybe another 30% sales? What's that combination look like for you and your business?
So, I mean, I've messed with a few different things, in my time. Right now, the breakdown for me, like I'm still building on the keynote speaker piece of it, which has been a lot of fun. But right now, about probably like 40% of my business is in the one to one. Um, and like so that's really it's shifted and changed, in my time too. So like that's really what I love doing because I like diving in really deeply into why somebody's doing what they're doing and what that ultimate impact can really be. Because obviously we all have goals, but the one-on-one is what I really love doing. Um, Another probably right now, so I have to look at the numbers again, probably 30% is in the speaking. I said I'd like to grow that a little bit more because I can have a little more impact on a larger audience, doing some of those things. And then the remainder is in like the retaining piece of it as well, where people said have me come in and work with like their teams or help them build a full sales team from the ground up, which can be a long term kind of daunting task sometimes, especially when we're talking about not only hiring and firing, but training and everything else. So that's kind of the breakdown for me right now. But again, it's shifted here and there. So
Neat, neat. No, it's a good breakdown. And, the hardest thing is, right, is going from employee, right, where you had the sales
yes.
jobs and you learned so much and you had the 10,000 hours of experience. And then now you get mentored. He tells you, hey, or she tells you, like, hey, you have the skill set and you go out on your own, but you're really self-employed, right? So you're
Hmm.
owning your own job and then you've created a business out of it by having the systems, the VA, and these different revenue cycles or streams of income that you have in there within the same parallel of the business. So neat stuff. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, engaging with, your clients. Do you, what, with your VA? Is there anything that you've been doing that helps you kind of strategize so that people are, wanting to stay with you longer just by the sheer fact that they want to be around your atmosphere, your energy, all that type of stuff?
So when it comes to engagement, I mean, I again, I really try to be as consistent as I possibly can. Something that's really helped me, particularly that I learned early on, was being really cognizant and intentional with my time. It can be so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind, as I call it, and like your day to day, like, hey, I've got to get back to this person and I've got to reach out to that person. I got to call these. I got all that stuff can really make it difficult to take a step back and say like, okay, what is actually working? So I
Mhm.
dedicate at least an hour a week, as much as I possibly can, to take a step back and say, like, okay, is this social media strategy really working? Are these ads working? Is the one-on-ones, like, is this really still making sense doing it in this specific way? And asking and again, questioning those assumptions that I may have made unintentionally over the course of the previous, weeks or months. Reaching out to the VA, I mean, again, I try to be as responsive as I can, and same with my clients. Just saying, like, hey, like, they reached out saying, hey, I had a question on like whatever strategy we were talking through, or my accountability homework for this next week. Can you just talk me through this a little bit better? And again, I try to be as responsive I can. Try to get back to people within 24 to 48 hours at most, as much as possible. Um, so I mean, that's really kind of how I do my best to stay engaged with people. Like the fun thing too is that obviously, like, there's a lot of sales coaches. There's a lot of people doing something similar to what I'm doing out there. But what
Mhm.
I've realized is, like, the people that I help is really what makes me different. And not that like my clients are crazy, special or unique in any way. I think they're great people, but what I mean by that is that I address things in my way, and I work with people the best in my specific way. I learned that early on. It's kind of a fun side note. I had a very, very brief career as a ballroom dance instructor, and what I realized in that particular job is that you have to be able to say more or less the same thing in different ways to help it to resonate with different people. Now,
Mm.
I'm a little more of a direct guy, and there's other sales coaches out there that aren't gonna be as direct as me, and we're both gonna work with, similar people, but in very different ways. So I think that's really kind of the most important piece.
Interesting. So, well, that's a cool industry, right? I watch Dancing with the Stars a lot, and
Yeah,
man, I'm Colombian, so I can dance. I got natural
love it.
blood skills. So, but my mom, I remember sharing, all those things, and it's different attributes. You mentioned golf in the interview here. You've mentioned different ways that you've engaged, and there's little things like that, even that you have a specialty since you were a ballroom dancer instructor. These are little cool things of how maybe you find a two or three clients that really want to learn that or really love that, and you can instruct them almost in a side way, right?
Yeah.
To guide them to certain classes and stuff like that. That's pretty awesome stuff. So, well, cool, cool. As we end our interviews, we go through CEO, and you've shared, a few of these topics. But I did want to end with one of the last questions I have is Hermosi. You and I, both like him and
Mhm.
enjoy his contact. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the pitfalls and things that you've endured? Some of the challenges, right? As you said, there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of former executives or people that got laid off and become coaches instantaneously, those types of things. And it's all great because they're using their knowledge and they're attracting their tribe, right? So,
Yeah.
but what are some pitfalls that you've seen and experienced, and then also can share with the Go for SEO community?
So I think an easy pitfall, particularly on the entrepreneurial side, is not knowing who your avatar is, not knowing your people. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to solve problems, right? And the bigger the problem, then the bigger the price point, all of that kind of stuff, right? Like Hormozy talks about that. And I think it's so easy to, particularly early on in entrepreneurial and business, is to say like, well, I just need anybody and everybody, right? Which can be true. Like, we need to keep the lights on to some degree. But as soon as possible, we need to sit down and say, okay, who are the people that I do my best work with. Like for me, for example, I obviously I'm a sales coach, so hopefully those people are that are coming to me are sales professionals in some way or have some sort of sales need, but are also the people I've realized that I'm kind of a personality trait are just kind of gritty. Like they're just willing to kind of grind some of those things out, and that's not everybody, right? It's like figuring out some of those qualities and characteristics of your avatar, I think are really really important because we don't want every dollar, we want the right dollar and the right time, which I mean, it's so easy to kinda lose sight of some of those things.
Yeah, no, that's a great point right there. Go for Show community. If you want to listen to that, yeah, we don't want every dollar. We want the right dollar at the
Yep.
right time, right? So, yeah, because look, you can get trapped on just accepting everything up front. And look, like you said, bills still come in. The rent
Mhm.
or the mortgage is still due. The car payments, all that stuff. So it can be scary going on your own, especially when there's an individual side where you're sharing your specific talents with the world, and you're needing to kind of bill for that as well, right? You can't
Yeah,
do it for
yep.
free all the whole time. So awesome, awesome. Well, part of CEO is client experience, E is for engagement, and O is for operational excellence, and the systems you're using, the softwares, and all that type of stuff. So why don't we start with that? As a value proposition, working with Jason Hicks, and your style and what you do, what is client experience? If you take us through like a 60-second, insight from working with you as a sales coach.
Yeah, so, as I said earlier, like, when you my very first kind of well, not contact, I guess, with you, our first kinda one-on-one discussion will be with that complimentary call, where I think it's so easy to like kind of just manufacture coaching where everybody gets the same kind of treatment over and over again. And I think it needs to be as custom as it possibly can because every person is different and every
Mm,
situation is different. So being as custom as we can to each individual's needs, I think is really, really important. So I work with some like I've got my own platform and softwares and things where like homeworks and stuff like that are really easy to track and again are very custom to each individual person and then every resource is readily at hand so as goals and situations change you have those things readily available for you too.
Nate. And then I know you shared engagement, but any other insights on what you've been able to do, use ballroom dancing or
Mm.
other ways that to really engage with your clients so that they stay long term and you have a long, great client experience and journey with them, or the VA and things that you've done to engage with them and your clients. So,
Yeah, so I think maybe the strategy or I don't know if you know if it's a strategy, maybe it's a tip, I guess, I don't know. This really worked really well for me is to be as genuine as you can. Just be who you are and your tribe will show up. So be who you are on social media posts, on your engagement, all of that kind of stuff. Like I'm a little bit of a smart aleck sometimes, so like that's just who I am. So that's how I come across. So like engaging with those people and the people that opt out, say hey, I don't really feel like this is for me, for at least for right now. Then honor that, but also treat it as honor to you too, because it's so easy to say like, oh well, that person didn't really want what I had to offer. Yes, but would you have really done your best work with that kind of person? And a lot of times the answer is no.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, the ability to decipher that and then, when you're engaging with them, either from a tactical standpoint or from a personal standpoint, there's a lot of value in knowing who you don't want to spend time with, right? So,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
the last one is operational excellence. So I know we talked about the VA and using some of that to kind of take the load off of your day to day. Are there any softwares that you're using? Are you using AI nowadays? What is going on with the operational side of your business?
So, I mean, the softwares that I like to, I mean, one obvious, this is probably pretty obvious for everybody out there being a sales coach, but is to have a really, really solid CRM. Like if you are engaging with people on, LinkedIn or whatever, getting people to come in as potential clients or you're selling them stuff or whatever the case might be, and you aren't logging those things, then you are doing yourself and your business a disservice. Just kind of period, full stop there. Now some of the things like I'm a big fan of like HubSpot, MailChimp, like some of those kind of things. Really what you want to be looking for in a CRM is like some automations and some place to put in notes and tasks, meaning like, hey, I need to make sure I'm following up with John in 2 weeks or 6 months or whatever the case might be. because it's so easy to, again, to get lost and forget about some of those things if they aren't marked down clearly. I am using some AI. I mean, GPT, I mean, Claude is really, really good too. Really what it comes down to, in my opinion, when it comes to AI is your prompts. So what I like to do is to train a specific bot to do a specific thing, whether it be like editing, like a blog post or something that I've put together. One of my favorite kind of taglines, I guess, to a prompt is to say like, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z for me. Ask me any questions that you need in order to perform that task to the best of your ability. And usually they'll
Hmm.
come up with, 4, 5, 6, whatever questions that I maybe hadn't really thought about, or I thought was, just kind of innate and I just assumed it. Just to, again, it really improves things over the long term. At least it has so for me so far.
Yeah, it's an interesting area of life, right? I think
Yeah.
I upgraded to the paid version of ChatGPT and working with. I'm trying to figure out how to get the agent scenario out of it. I don't know how to
Yes.
do that just yet. Because obviously I wanted to do some tasks for me while I'm sleeping or doing other things. And from my day-to-day job as a commercial banker, I'm always doing acquisition stuff. It actually just helped me put together kind of a poll and also a
Mm,
checklist of things. And then when you DM me, I'm going to have a little PDF and it created everything for me on my
yeah.
LinkedIn. So it's kind of cool on my day-to-day job. So awesome stuff. Well, hey, Jason, it's been a pleasure having you on. We certainly will put on all the ways to get a hold of you. But what are some ways that you prefer? And is there any other things that you're giving away? A little booklet, an ebook? What are you doing to that maybe the audience can take advantage of either on your website or some sort of DM mechanism?
Yeah, so, I mean, the easiest way to get a hold of me is just, I mean, through my website. I mean, of course, feel free to message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, any of that kind of stuff too. But through my website, jacobhickscoach.com is going to be the easiest way to get a hold of me. I do have kind of my favorite tab on my website is my growth hub, where I've got a ton of free resources on there for you, like some of my favorite like entrepreneurship books or business books or sales books on there that you guys can check out. Anybody out there that's, kind of thinking about, hey, I don't really even know where to start. I do have what I call my entrepreneur sales toolkit, where it kind of walks you through like a few of the things that we talked about today. It also talks about like it's like your CRM in better depth, your follow up processes, and even like how to handle like rejection too, because we're all going to experience that at some point.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but subscribe to the channel, everybody. Get on the Go for CO movement. Our book is coming out at the end of this month. So I'm wrapping up the final editing portions of it. The 4A formula, untangle any challenge and think like a CEO. So Jacob, hopefully you'll share that with your clients as well. We love the Go for
Absolutely.
CO movement. It's really making an impact to see Jay, different things and different ways that Jacob can really help other people and grow and do the things together and collaborate and synergize and all those types of things. So check them out again. Jacob at jacobhickscoach.com and www.jacobhickscoach.com. Thanks so much for being on, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been fantastic.